Grabbing a soda.
All
Sorry.
right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fridays at 4 here on twitch.tv/DDO stream. I'm your community manager, Cordovan, and I'm here today with a special guest. Today we have got with us executive producer Severlin. We're here to talk a little bit about the roadmap that we just released today, a little bit about the year ahead, and we'll be doing some general Q&A from you in Twitch chat. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. And yeah, it's always a little tough to get that roadmap out the door, but we did get it out the door. It's still even in January, and I'd like everyone to know. And we've got it available on DDO.com. You can take a look. It does have a roadmap image, which has been kind of a nice development as well that we'd like to do when we can. And it's a good outline for the year of 2023. So welcome, Severlin, and what do you think? What are you most looking forward to?
Obviously, facing off on the basically the final chapter, the Vecna story is going to be super cool.
Yep.
I like Jerome, and I want to see that revamped, so that will be fun. And more character options is always something that I like, but I like doing character build meta and such like that. So the ongoing archetypes and such is great. So that's fantastic. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yep, and we'll be able to get to, I think, everyone's questions here today. Just real quick, update 58 is quickly approaching. We should have a new build up on Lamani in the near future for that. And our 17th anniversary. And then we've got a PAX East thing that we're doing this year, too. We're actually going to have more information about what it is as we get closer to it. But from what I'm hearing, it's at least going to have a little piece of community input as well associated with it. So this PAX East live presentation from some members of the DDO development team is even going to have some kind of audience participation, audience being basically anyone who wants to from the DDO community. So I know it's a nice little tease there, but it should be pretty fun. I think probably the biggest thing that we should probably talk about is the bullet point in Q2, we've got an expansion, a mini expansion that we announced here today.
Yeah. So some stuff. Sorry, I'm kind of looking at Twitch chat and going through. So what do you want to talk about? So ask me anything. So yeah, I'm here to take all of the easy softball questions.
No, well, I mean, I guess one softball would be that we do have a mini expansion coming. Pre-purchase is going to be in April. It's called Vecna Unleashed, and it has to do with Morgrave University sort of taking a final stand to thwart Vecna's plans, of which you will be a part. So quite a bit to talk about there. In terms of softball, I suppose, why don't we get to the hardball question here, which people want to ask about in chat, and that is the VIP program. For a couple of weeks now, we've had the community ask us what our plans for VIP are, and what would you like to say about that?
Sure. So we loved doing daily gold rolls, right? Like we went into the pandemic, we're going to be like, people are stuck at home. We wanted to give the players joy, and we were like, we're going to do something super cool. Unfortunately, that's not something we can continue indefinitely. It just, as we were looking at it, we can see, piled up items as people were accumulating items. And there's two parts of my job: bring joy to the players, which I love doing, but I'm also have to be fiscally responsible. And you can't sustain something like gold rolls and the amount of stuff it gives out continuously. So what we're going to be doing that we're looking at is, I've been asking engineering to look into a system, but we need engineering support for it to give us the ability to do month-to-month claims like a loyalty program. So what we're thinking of doing is we're exploring, can we have it so that every month a VIP can claim something, and those things will accumulate over the month. So the longer that you VIP and make the claims, the further along you get and the more stuff you get. Some of them will be one-time claims. Some of them will be things that are sweet in game, make the game a little less onerous. Some of the things will be, expanded, other expanded things. I don't want to get into the specifics of it because we're still working that out. And the reason I don't want to go too deep into that is because if it becomes onerous or like a year of engineering time in order to get all that, which it doesn't look like it will be, then we may have to back out and re-examine, what we're going to do with the VIP. That's why we haven't announced anything, because we're not going to put something like that in the producer's letter because it's still very much a work in process. This is a place that I personally have no problem with talking about stuff that we're kind of working on, because you know that in these Ask Me Anythings, I sometimes talk about things and then we have to change our plans. It's not really the same thing as putting ink to paper on a roadmap. So that's sort of what we're looking on the sort of VIP front. I think that will be cool, and that you'll be able to get something every month. Some of it will, affect gameplay. Some of it will be things that you can get one time. So that would be good. Yeah. So basically, we can't really do it server level. That's the problem. Imagine if we did it server level, then for you to really get your full value, you have to log in and make a claim on every server every month. And then you fall behind on one of the servers. And if you need to switch to that server because you found a really cool guild over there, all of a sudden it becomes an issue. We really need it to be account based. We went through we do have the tech to do it as a account thing per server, but I think that would be really clunky. And so we're trying not to do that. Now, maybe in the end we do something with that, but so.
All right. I imagine we may get some follow-up questions or questions related to that in chat as well.
Yeah. Someone was asking. Yeah. I'm not sure.
We've had a lot of people offer things that we could do for VIP value, and I know in recent weeks we've been reading a lot of that feedback very carefully. But we're not really in a position to. It doesn't. We wouldn't want to speculate on these ideas right now in kind of a live environment, and we are considering some of these things behind the scenes, but it's not a done deal or rejected. It's being considered, right? And so you want to be careful, I think, about what we might say about the future in terms of what we're going to be doing for VIPs, right?
Yeah. So someone asked about the difference between a mini expansion and expansion, but I mean, all of you have seen that, right? Saltmarsh was a mini expansion and Isle of Dread was an expansion. So if you're looking at sort of what to expect, Saltmarsh was beefy, had a lot of content in it, had some goodies attached to it. That's basically your difference. So it's not like this is anything new. We've already done this kind of thing. So that's the kind of scope that you're talking about.
All right. Well, let's go from one hot topic to another. Reaper Point 156 plus cosmetics. Air Maiden is suggesting question mark. We do have some players with a high number of Reaper points. Who, what do we want to do about players with high numbers of Reaper points above and beyond what you could ever spend through the available Reaper trees?
One of the things that, one of the things about Reaper is that we do want to revamp the system somewhat. The trees are heavy on our systems, and we want to basically go more towards as you accumulate the Reaper points, you get the points automatically. Not because we want to reduce player, our goal isn't reducing player choice necessarily, but to simplify the system so that it comes up online and goes offline as you enter and leave dungeons to help lag. We find that a lot of the players tend to go through a certain different path anyway, so I'm sure that there'll be people that will be sad if we change that system. Our concern is that if you like to go super DPS early and then go survivability, and someone else wants to go super survivability early and then DPS, if we went with a straight sort of linear system where you just accumulate things, we can go much further along, but you'll lose that functionality, but also it will be much more performant. The other thing that we want to do for that is that when we essentially going in a long line conceptually cuts down where you are in your Reaper points to one single pre-bought number. And it will be easy for us to have the group leader be able to share some of their Reaper power to the party, so that if you're new to the game, you could join. There's a possibility of you joining someone that has Reaper points already, and then you basically kind of catch up, not all the way, but some of them, so that you can group more easily in high Reaper with someone who's already owned the points. We could never do that with a tree because we can't expect people to select the tree, and we wouldn't want to do that because it wouldn't be performant. So we kind of have this idea in our heads about doing that, and then once we do that, basically we'll just keep taking the track beyond where it is now for different rewards and such. It's just the revamp of the system is something that is just tip of the to-do list gets pushed back for other stuff.
All right. I should just mention real quick on the image that I've had up while we were talking. This is a work in progress shot of the anniversary armor that's going to be distributed for the 17th anniversary.
I really like that.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of questions about the scope of Vecna Unleashed. That is our mini expansion announced for later this year. There's also been quite a few questions about rating, because if you look at our main roadmap image, and I believe I actually have. I'm not finding it right away, so I'll just look at this one. But we do have in Q2, right, Vecna Unleashed, and then also in Q3, Joam and Raid Update. So that's had some speculation about, well, what do we mean by Raid Update for one? And two, does that mean that's the only raid, or are we getting a new raid and all that sort of thing? So the mini expansion will have a new raid in it. We can say that. And we're working on what that raid update would be for Q3. I've heard a name of an existing piece of content that we might update, but I don't know if we're in a position to state that publicly today. Maybe you know a little more than I do.
I do, but I think we're going to keep that closer to the vest. That's a piece of content, but yeah, like I think that the Raiders will have both of those to look forward to, and new rewards and some good stuff to do.
Okay. The main thing I want to get across is, yes, we do have a new raid coming in 2023. So, in addition to whatever that thing is. All right. I could also mention, because I know I've seen some chat about this as well, about the upcoming transfer period to Orion and Sorlona. We are just about ready to say more about when that's going to happen and how that's going to work. I think we're going to really get through the weekend essentially first, while we do a little bit of work behind the scenes, and expect some news pretty soon, probably after that, assuming everything is going well.
Sure. What other questions do we have?
Another one here real quick that is not so much one that you can answer. I do not yet know which day the PAX East presentation is going to be. As soon as I get that information, I will make it available on the forums and social media.
Okay, going through any level cap increase. No, where the scope of level cap increases is every 2 years. This is what we're planning. So the mini XPAC year wouldn't have a level increase. The XPAC year would with the current system, unless we change it. But that's our current thought. So there's a question deep diving into named items and their design. I think that's more of a question for our item designers. There's a lot of things. One of the interesting things about DDO is that there's so many different builds. There's a lot of multi-feed. So a lot of that gear is filling holes. So sometimes when you look at gear and you're like, why did they make this item? There's like a handful of builds that just they had a hole in it that they get made for. So there's a lot of different reasons to make different kinds of named items. Hopefully we have a lot of named items for everyone in every pack. That's our overall goal. So and a chance to bring back the old armor kits with the new cosmetic system. We know that there are armor appearances out there that the players can't get anymore, and we'd like to bring those back. Yes, that got pushed down. I think there was a push to do that at the beginning of last year. It got derailed by other more pressing matters, and that. We will probably see another Universal Tree. We will probably see an Epic Destiny this year. We will not see a class. We'll concentrate more on our archetypes, and so yeah, the race probably not. Right now it's really expensive to build a race, and until we catch back up on that, we might not. We probably won't have a race this year. We'll probably be looking at the first race the year after. We don't have an iconic completionist on our board of things that we are planning on doing soon, although I do like that idea. And it would be cool to see. That is not currently on the idea board. So I will, I will attempt to get that on there. Revamp giant hold loot. I do like giant hold.
That would be cool. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be cool. That might be something that I like that idea. It wasn't on the idea board, but yeah. So we are looking into UI scaling probably soon. At some point, we're going to get more avatar updates, but if that happens, it'll be later in the year. We definitely want to revamp avatars a little to a lot, and we might try to get stuff in this year. So that's cool.
Before we get too far away from it, on the UI scaling, I think my understanding of what you're saying, though, is that we will be looking into it soon. Not necessarily that the players would have that UI scaling available soon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The problem is that honestly, the UI scaling, the two big things that we were going for is looking into the UI scaling or looking into the VIP technology. And I had to make a hard decision on we're going to look at the VIP technology first before we look into the UI scaling. That was a difficult decision, but there was a lot of people that were asking about the VIP. I have no news on the free quest code to share. I think we have what swag do we have for the PAX event?
Is being discussed as we speak, but at the very least, there'll be some historic swag available, which if you have never had an opportunity to get it, will be new to you. But yeah, we're talking about it. There'll be something for sure. I just don't know what.
Yeah, we don't know currently how hard UI scaling is going to be. What I'd like to think is that we can go to the UI code and find like the shared thing that we can manipulate the pixels in one place and get it 95% working. But our code is, old and varied by who wrote it. And sometimes things are simpler than you thought when you thought they were going to be hard. And sometimes something that seems really super easy was really difficult. The other problem with UI scaling is you will see a lot of the icons when we do it pixelize until we res them, and the resing up of icons is going to be a big problem. The other thing is I don't think that scaling up the UI with the current kind of gold piping would look good. So you may see some of the UI move towards more like the HUD gray, transparent, more modern look, if only because it scales better. Character slots, I hear you on that. I will talk to them about having them been on sale. So that'll be good.
We had a question essentially about will we ever get to Epic Sorrow Dusk? Why did we pick Droam essentially? Do you have any thoughts about why we picked Jerwam for Q3
Yeah,
here?
Stardust is a pain in the ass to find. No, I mean seriously, like Rome, you run into the
Yeah.
12 and you're running through the content and you can find the stuff. When the people trying to get to Sorrowdusk Island, unless you know the content very well, you could just wander around and get lost and not be able to find the dungeons. So it would be significant more work to figure out the flow of the Sorrowdusk Island content in order to get the people into meaningful places, and then you'd have to create, or you'd have to create NPCs that move people around. That was all a big chunk of work that the Jerome stuff doesn't really need to do. So that's why we would do Jerome over Sorrow Dusk Island when we looked at it. Um, Also, I think that the Jerome feeling of wartime is a theme that we can revisit because we haven't done something like that recently.
Yep.
More of our content has been explorer type rather than like outside threat. So I think that would do it. Um,
I had a couple of questions about whether the free quests in Jerwam would be included in the revamp. My understanding is some of the scoping of that is still being discussed, so we can't really definitively announce today.
for
But
what?
it'll at least be the attack on Stormreach adventure pack.
Yeah, I didn't make any promises. I didn't have to make any promises there. Just
Yep.
comparing it to Sorrow Dusk Island.
Yep.
I will look into guest passes for other content. I'd love to go back to Evening Star, but there's a lot of content there. One of the issues with Evening Star is that if you go through, you can easily level in that area up to 20. And so I don't know that there's a big need for it there. But I have to look. Also, I think that if I recall correctly, there's something about that particular content where they used a different design, something behind the scenes to design it that makes it more difficult to go back in and rescale it. Am I misremembering that? I'll look into that. I would love to go back to Forgotten Realms for something and do stuff. I'd love more Tyranny of Dragon stuff with the Dragon Cult, for instance. And I do like Char, I like the dark cult stuff that we were doing. So I would love to do that. All right, going through the hard questions, gifting. So one of the issues that we have with gifting, and the reason we don't have it, is because there's a big issue with fraud. And as soon as you allow gifting, it allows accounts to be farmed for points to be moved to other people, and that causes a lot of problems. One is increases the chance that your account will get compromised, and when you log in, all of your stuff will be gone, and it gives a reason for people to do it. This is why we don't usually do gifting. I would love to have gifting. We all really would love for people during holidays to gift other DDO stuff to other people. But it's a hard world to make sure that people with less than honorable intentions aren't grabbing the accounts of people in order to basically fund them for whatever they can gift to other people. So that's one of the reasons that we don't tend to do that.
We've had quite a few questions in chat about two-factor authentication. We have made some commitment to doing that in the future, in the past. Where do we sit on that?
Oh, okay. My fault. I just answered this for Lotra. So we're working on two-factor authentication. The holdup is we're also working on new launcher technology, and the two-factor authentication can't happen until the launcher technology. And the launcher technology can't happen until we have store updates, which we're waiting on. So we're working on store updates, and then we will have a new launcher, and then we can do two-factor authentication. So we're through most of the two-factor authentication backend code, but now we're waiting for the launcher tech. And the launcher tech is being worked on, but that will require store updates. And the store updates are planning on coming sometime in the early summer. So I would expect that once we go that, you'll see the dominoes fall into place. So that then launch our two-factor authentication, right, like in the mid to late year, if that makes sense.
All right. Let's see. Probably a good time. People want to ask a little bit about melee love, armor class updates, things like that. I know in some ways that'll be addressed with the archetype and other work that we're doing this year. What about a general overall melee update or armor class update? Update? Something like that. Armor class has been something that has had several systems kind of work through it over the years of the game.
I mean, do you want us to talk? Do you want? So there's two things that I can do here. I can theoretically talk about AC and its design, which I would love to do because I love talking about stuff like that. Or I can talk about definitive plans on that. I can go either way. We don't have definitive plans to revamp our. It's something that we looked at. I would love to go back to a system that was much closer to 3.5 on armor class, where you had a max armor class and you knew as a certain character class what your armor class should be for that time, and you work towards that. And once you hit it, you could start itemizing for other things. But then you'd play the game where people do monsters that you sunder would be able to reduce that armor class. You could protect against sunder or other armor debuffs by overstatting your self count and go to a D20 system. But you have to be careful because it's so narrow that there's a lot of stuff that would then, just overcap it too much. But then you have to change all the percentages to armor class to be more like overcap protection or increasing your max armor class, much like the dodge, increasing dodge. And maybe the difference between a tank and a normal DPS is they can add 4 extra points of max armor class to do that. But that's a whole system that we would have to design. And even if we came up with a pretty tight design and think we could do it, going and explaining that to the players why we're doing it and positioning it as a revamp and making the players not feel like they're being nerfed is a big deal. The good news about armor class is that right now the way it works is the higher level you get, the more the curve happens. And so as you get higher and higher level, more and more armor classes needed to move along the curve and make a substantial update, which means that you can have a lot more slop on either side in order to, the people that fall behind don't fall behind as fast, and the people up ahead don't pull ahead as fast. So the current system has its advantages. The only thing I don't like is you have to splash in percentage increases sometimes in order to differentiate the tank's AC to get up. But we don't have any announcements about revamping the system, although we've talked a hell of a lot about it. Just to be like, do we want to change it? So that's going. Yeah. One of the interesting things about psionics, since I see that flying by, is because we already use a mana point system. The big key for psionics in 3.5 is kind of our default. So it becomes, what makes psionic different. Like, we don't want to just take a sorcerer and change the names of the spells and make it play exactly the same, because I don't think we'd add that much gameplay. And one of the things that we were talking about is there are some psionic systems that have a focus, and you have to maintain your focus on different things and swapping around the focus. Maybe that would be cool. But Alchemist. So Alchemist was way more work than we thought. The scope of it. We scoped it to one thing, and it was like doing all the spells, balancing all the spells, and implementing all the spells. The scope of it was so big that it would be a huge undertaking to do a scion. Because if we did psionics, we'd want to do at least 2 classes, right? Some kind of scion, and then some kind of psychic warrior with the soul knife in one tree, and then the straight warrior in a tree, and something like that at a minimum. And having 2 classes with a whole new set of spells essentially doubles our spell work for the entire game. Oh my God, it was huge, even though I'd love to do it. I mean, I want Githyanki with floating swords as much as everyone, but it's a tough system.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. That was cool. Yeah, so a lot to talk about though with armor class, and like you mentioned, we have had a lot of these same debates that you see on the forums and in the community, among ourselves about ways to move forward with armor class and things like that. So
Yeah,
Um,
people
I, I
actually wanted to deep delve.
yeah, yep, yep,
So,
absolutely. I did see a question about some wanting of some alphabetical sorting, and a
Stunning
few other
animation
things.
work.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love the Vistani dagger fighting.
Okay.
What would you? I wouldn't want to mess that up. Like I have like 5 Vistani characters. What else? Let's see. I'm making a Reaper XP tome. Uh, Maybe I think that we want to revamp the Reaper XP currently. It's kind of funny that we have two things. Some people are like, can we get ways to accelerate Reaper? And the other half are like, we're at the end of the Reaper tree. We want more cosmetic rewards. So, and that's one of the kind of cool things and challenges about game dev is like there's a wide variety of players that they're all looking for different things. Yeah, we'll probably do more monster manuals. I don't have any specific news on that. I know that we always want to do monster manuals.
I assume somewhat of a similar thing about hireling updates. What might the future look like for any hireling work we do?
Well, one of the things about hirelings, and the interesting thing about hirelings is in order to use hirelings effectively, well, first of all, hirelings get eaten up in Reaper. And as we have a little bit of power creep and people are kind of going into Reaper, they're finding that their hirelings die really quick. But I don't necessarily know that we want hirelings to be that effective in Reaper because the whole point of Reaper is to encourage players to group. The other thing about hirelings is a really learned skill. A new player coming in and trying to use a healing hireling is going to be like, this healing hireling isn't healing me and it's broken. But there are things you can do that really hurt your hireling, and there are things you can do that really help it. And you really have to micromanage putting down the flags, making sure they don't wander into traps. Sometimes you have to force them to heal you, and sometimes what you don't realize is they get stunned easier than you, and the reason they're brain dead isn't the AI. It's like they got stunned or a debuff or blinded or something that is preventing them from healing. So getting those hirelings working is actually like a whole thing that you have to learn to do. When a lot of players kind of put in a hireling, and when they die and hireling didn't put off the big heal for whatever reason, that's an issue. The other thing that drives me nuts is for the hirelings, which probably is a bad thing, is if you get multiple hirelings, it's not always clear, even when you explicitly say who your hireling will prioritize in healing. Like I've had times where my hirelings just I make the mistake of summoning the Ravenloft construct, and they'll just burn all their healing trying to keep up because the construct is taking half healing and it starts taking a lot of damage. The Raptor is the same thing; it has so many hit points to have survivability that if you're not paying attention, your hireling will burn through all of its healing points on the Raptor, and suddenly you're way away from a restaurant and you realize your hirelings run out. So I believe also that, and this was done on purpose. There are good hirelings and bad hirelings, and they were kind of designed so that you had to navigate. Not all hirelings are equal, and one of the weird things about
What?
people,
What? What?
yeah,
What are
is
you
they
saying?
have to learn which ones are good. I mean, not only like not in my experience, and I think I even looked into this when I looked into AI code, which I haven't been able to do coding in a long time, so I may be wrong on this. But like some of them just don't. The AI is different. They just have different AI and do different things. So you can get like really smart hirelings and ones that aren't as good. Like so, I think we even don't we have a hireling that like well if you get it, all they do is they spam grease to make your life miserable.
Yeah, a
I
few
think
like that.
one of our
Yeah,
sorcerer hirelings does that.
yeah. Garrett's my friend. Nobody say anything bad about Garrett. That's all I'm saying. But
My God, like, Okay, so how we talk about QA expectations when new content is released and how development team uses Lamania feedback. That is a like a 5-hour topic that is way bigger than the talk like this. One of the issues is that there's a lot of you and there's only a few of us, and sometimes going through all of that and making sure everything is covered is hard. Sometimes we just blow it. Like there's something that we just missed because there's a lot of content and we have to be better at that. I think mid-year we our pacing was such that a couple times it would just like we just stuff went out and it shouldn't have, and we just missed it. And usually what ends up happening there is it's not that we're not listening to the Lamania feedback, it's that internally there was a feature that went onto the QA list and one QA person thought that it was claimed and it wasn't, and it slipped through the cracks. So we've shored up those processes at the end of the year. So yeah, there's a kind of a lot to say about that. That's a good question, but it's a long answer and goes into the thing. The other problem is that our QA people work really hard, right? And so sometimes stuff happens and things got missed, but I don't want that to reflect on how hardworking our QA people. So let's see, what else?
I don't know about the 11th filigree slot. I don't know if that's coming with Vecna Unleashed or not.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make any promises on the next filigree slot, but I like having a lot because I like mixing and matching sets. So I think the augments and the pet equipment work, but it's easy for them to get overwhelmed. We would like to do a pet revamp at some point. I know that is on the idea list. It's just every time we look at it, the problem is that it's not something the systems designers can do in a vacuum. It actually requires engineering work. So right now, what's happening is much of the senior engineering working is working on lag. We're getting towards the phase 2 lag, and we've seen there's some good lag fixes on there, but we're not where we want to be yet. And then phase 3 will start. So part of the things that you're seeing in a lot of the stuff that is engineering is that they are working on endgame systems in order to do that. The questing system in particular is problematic for lag. Also, I suspect that our ancient network code does not handle bumps and twists and turns in long-term networking as well as maybe other games. And so you can have internet static, and other games can handle it well because they have more modern code, because they have better predictive models and we don't. And so you see more lag in our games when your internet has issues. I've seen that. But right now, our next big thing will be readdressing the quest system again and looking at that and looking at our back-end stuff. So for Lauren Slinger, if we did a Reaper revamp, it would be based on the party leader. And the reason for that is that we want the players to be able to customize their experience. And if they want to try Reaper with low points to see what it's like, they could pick a party leader with low points, and then the highest Reaper point people would retain their Reaper points, but not everyone would get them. Or you could have the higher Reaper point people take lead, which would encourage high Reaper people to run groups, because well, more importantly, it would encourage people to join the groups of high Reaper leaders. So
we don't have anything we could say about the D&D movie other than I think it looks good.
I honestly, I was pretty impressed with the second. The first one, I was like, oh, this looks cool. But I got more excited about when they released the second trailer. I thought the second trailer actually spoke to me more than the first one, so that was cool. Yeah, we don't really want people to bank XP pills because it makes divergent gameplay where they don't get rewards and then they just ping up all the XP at one time and jump up in a build where maybe they don't have the experience of it. So that's not really something that we'd like to do. We have talked about turning down the melee damage for Reaper to help on melee survivability. But honestly, with the hit point pass, melee's, at least my melee, was in pretty good shape. I mean, I made hardcore 20 with the melee, the Tempest Ranger with some extra stuff. But I only did low Reaper when I did it. I was more going for
I suspect we're talking particularly about the current, perceived gap by some in melee and not melee and high-end Reaper like R10s, things like that. I think there's some work, and I think that goes back to some of the AC revamp questions we received earlier as well, is that some of the melee and high-level Reaper, they've got a lot more to think about, up to and including a lot more damage that they're taking. And that's been something on folks' minds.
If the tank loses aggro, the problem is the melee die first. And you also have to worry about cleave stuff. The other issue is that when we redid the spells, I think that we let spell crit get out of hand. So right now, because of the spell crit, I think the spellcasters their damage has scaled more than we've been pretty good about making sure that all of your melee crit is on the same channels. So you can get melee crit from many different places, but it doesn't stack. I'm not necessarily sure of all of the. I think some of the casting crit stacks when we didn't intend it to, and they're scaling, especially in high Reaper when you really have a lot of gear, more than intended. And I think that that's leading into the why would I play a melee when the casters have that much more stuff. But that is something that. I'm just going off of when we looked at some of the math. I think that was one of the things we ran into.
I should just say, I said perceived gap, but I really just meant expressed sentiment for. I'm not trying to make a judgment call as to whether or not it exists or not, So.
Right. Yeah, someone talked about the Lizard Sentient Gem, about making you be able to get it somewhere else because it's only one. I think we did one per account because we do want some of the gems to be hard to get. But I think that for that, since they're cosmetic, we should probably revisit that. But I don't have any news on that right now. But that actually came up last week, in fact. And it's kind of funny you brought it up because we were just talking about it. Here's the issue with Reaper levels, right? There's two ways of doing it. There's one of the things that we joke about is turn it up to 11. The meme, we were going to offer Reaper 11 with different things, but it's hard because you want to be careful about, what you do and what you didn't. I mean, the other option is to change Reaper so that it scales properly because the players have over-scaled it. You have to be careful because if the players like doing Reaper 10 and you change it so that the maximum Reaper they can do is 7, they're going to really feel nerfed. And that isn't going to be fun for them. Even though it might be better for the long-term game, having to dial down your difficulty when you're used to running at a certain level, man, that feels bad. So we want to be careful what happens. So. I think that the comment, if you remove crit multiplier from casters, you clearly have no idea how your game works. First of all, I'm not deep down into the dev, so I wouldn't worry about my specifics. Second of all, we're not talking about removing crit multiplier. We're saying I think that there's some crit multipliers out there which add and maybe shouldn't, which is two different messages. So. Everybody wants to buff, but so let me give you an example of part of the issue. On one hand, someone is saying, I want you to buff melee and not nerf casting. And on the other hand, over here, someone is saying, we're running Reaper 10 and it's too easy. So that is essentially what leads to it, right? Buff melee don't reduce casters, so we buff melee. And then the meta changes, or we put in a new tree, and we keep buffing, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, we're doing Reaper 10 too easy. That is essentially the goal and sort of the wave that we're following when we do that. I don't like nerfing, honestly. I would rather buff underperforming, but it gets to a point where you do run into a problem And then, like, for instance, one of the things we could do is rebalance Reaper so that with the slow power creep, maybe our initial Reaper balance is no longer really valid for now. And these are all the discussions of, what can we do that will make the game more fun and make it feel good. Good questions today. Some really tough ones and some deep diving ones. The reason there's chess ransacking, honestly, is to diversify content. The more we relax chess ransack, the more people repeat the same content over and over again. The other issue is that one of my biggest fears isn't that something's too grindy, it's that I don't have anything to do. And when you increase chess ransack, if you allow it to ransack less, what I mean is you increase the drop rate. What ends up happening is the players will finish the content quicker because they can get what they want from it quicker, but also they burn themselves out because they run the same content over and over again and they don't have a reason to diversify. And I know that that can be frustrating when you feel like that one item is there and it's necessary to finish your build. On the other hand, I wouldn't want to change it so that somebody plays for 50 hours to get the items instead of where they only had to play for 20 hours before the ransack, and suddenly they get the item, but it doesn't feel good because they're so burnt out from running, like, it's crazy. So that's one of the interesting things about ransack is that there's a sort of a relationship there of how much we expect the players to play in pursuit of one specific thing versus how how often we want them to do.
There is a very specific question in Twitch chat asking why. Actually, wait a second. Where is that now? Shoot. There was a question about getting more information about chest ransack in the combat log, or like in the feedback in the UI. And my understanding is we actually have a change taking place related to that in the near future. I've seen the check-in, so I think we may have something to say in the near future about that.
Yeah, we did talk about an exclusive something for VIPs, like that. I think that, or at least something that the VIPs get for free and everyone else has to pay for. But it's hard because there are some VIPs that don't value the cosmetics as much. Also, the sentient gems tend to only be for high level. So anybody who's doing the heroic loop isn't really using them. And even in your first life, it's actually, we were just talking about this. You actually don't get a viable sentient weapon until late in the 20s unless you know enough to grab that Ravenloft one. And I don't think you can grab the Ravenloft one. I think Amanda was telling me, Tolero was telling me that you can't grab the Ravenloft one if you took the heroic version. And I mean, who doesn't take the heroic version at level 10, right? It's such a big DPS increase. So there's some issues with, like, a new epic gem is something that might not make the best VIP reward.
Yeah, someone really wants us to talk about a cool tie-in event to the D&D movie. I keep seeing that being asked repeatedly in chat, but we really don't have anything we could say about it. Sorry.
The issue is this: if you are in control of a movie as a company, and you have a lot of people have licenses, you kind of don't want to drop all of the special sauce about the movie to them and risk having leaks about what's going to be in the movie, right? So one of the issues is when by the time the movie comes out, we'll be seeing it in real time, and so the tie-ins are more difficult to do unless we do like and then you can't do cosmetics of the specific characters because there may be rights for specific actors who you can't use their specific image. So sometimes the tie-in in the movies, at least I'm finding that it's hard to do on that. The other problem is, like, a lot of times movies they need to be a movie. And so they're not working exactly like D&D, so you have to be careful for that. New dances in DDO, not on our list of something to do because we usually tie that into different races. But I can imagine a dance that would propagate over all of the race. Although honestly, if I was going to add one dance in DDO right now, it would have to be the Wednesday dance. Come on, that is like the number one meme on the internet.
Gosh, you're probably right. Yeah.
Like,
At least in January 2023, it would almost have to be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
if we are level 32 and here up, it's scrolling off. Can we go back to camp once we earn enough to be level 20? I'm not exactly sure what that means, but it was always our intention that the extended levels should not be affecting either of your TR groups. A lot of people are asking for a DDO quest code, or we have nothing to announce on that. Like there are things that cost us a lot of money to do, and we were able to do during the pandemic because we were trying to do special stuff for the people stuck at home. We are evaluating whether that's ever going to be possible again, hopefully, but we want to be careful. Again, I want to make sure that these games are around 10, 20, 30 years. And in order to do that, I have to sometimes be the bad guy and make, decisions about the financial viability of doing stuff. And I try to be as generous as I can, but I can't do stuff that will mean that you won't be able to play this game with me and like when we're all old and gray.
Supporter packs, ?
Yeah, that's something that we're working on. I think that we can do a cool supporter pack sometime. I'd like to see one for the anniversary, honestly, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. With some sweet cosmetics and some stuff to do. We're still discussing what's going to be in there, though. But you'll get, a generous amount of astral shards and stuff if we do that. I would love to do a supporter pack, and that's something that we discussed and are actively working on.
Rollstream, do you know more about what you mean when you say, are we going to continue with storage changes? Earlier we had said we had wanted to evaluate the search filter options first before continuing, if you recall correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did our newest filter changes hit Lamanier yet?
I don't think so.
Okay, that might be the reason why they're saying that, is that we actually I think we're just shoring up storage changes. We just did some, but I don't know whether they've hit Lamanier or not. I sometimes see stuff early.
Okay.
I'd love to see a Ninja Spy revamp. Yep. I've been wanting to play a Ninja Spy revamp. Monk is weird because it's so different. Because you have a whole system of build up to these end things, and it's different from DDO, any of the other classes. I think one of the reasons that Monk isn't maybe as popular is because you have 5 different build ups and then a whole bunch of different introductions in the chaos of DDO. It's kind of hard to get good payoff from there.
All right. I think some of the end of that may have kind of scratched out your internet lip a little bit.
Did I do lag on the internet?
No, I think it's okay. I think it might have just been the last couple seconds just got kind of scratched out of your answer. Sorry.
I apologize. Yeah, I guess my internet must have lagged out a little bit. I don't have anything to comment on revamping skeletons in the closet raids augments. That is something that is a good thing to bring up on the forums for our systems designers. A lot of people making Reaper options, but it's probably a little bit deep divey to go talk about different Reaper options.
So I see a question that I think is a little bit of a larger question. This one's from Duncan Thrakes. Will the auto level to 32 be removed eventually? And I think what this individual is talking about is that, when you go through the reincarnation process, because we don't yet have a legend, there's no legendary reincarnation, right? So when you get through your epic levels, you're brought back up to your current legendary level. This is phrased as, will the auto level to 32 be removed eventually? But the intention is it'll go up to where you are on the legendary XP track. So some point in the future when we're above level 32, it's not going to bring you to 32. It's going to bring you to whatever you're at in the
Yeah.
legendary progress track.
So let's say that you were 36 and
Mhm.
level cap was 38 or whatever. You
Yep.
should be able to do an epic destiny jump then. And then when you get to level 20, go back to where you were, get to level
Yep.
30. So that jump probably won't go away because that's the idea, but eventually you'll be able to do it, and go back down to level 30 is the whole idea. One of the concerns that a lot of people were saying is they were worried that as the level increase happened, that their epic destiny uh, past lives would get longer and longer, and we definitely have implemented it so that that's not the case.
Yeah.
You won't suffer. Right now, our design goal is that you don't suffer your legendary progress when you do an epic destiny.
Let me ask a question and do a total plug. Thanks, Krell. How do we feel the secret ending for the Isle of Dread raid was handled? But before you answer that question, let me mention that we have got one Torque who is going to be on Arcanaverse's Twitch channel. This is tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you're watching this in the near future, I'm talking about Saturday, January 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Arcanaverse. Torque is going to be on talking about the making of Skeletons in the Closet, including some behind-the-scenes look at the secret bits there. So that's literally happening tomorrow, and would be probably a great question to ask in that chat. But what'd you think about the secret and the raid for Isle of Dread?
I mean, I liked it because I think that it's very easy. So one of the things that is hard is I want to make smart decisions about content that appeals to most people. But one of the problems is if you go completely in that direction and only do that, I think it really takes out a lot of the small details and interesting side things about the game that. So sometimes you have to throw that out the window and do something that is kind of special, right?
Yeah.
To add some special sauce that maybe, yeah. And I think that the secrets for the raid and having extra completion and going through the Isle of Dread and finding, the little clues is that special sauce that like make the players have fun at finding details. And I think that the content people have done that. They've also done that in gear, where like some people will find ways to upgrade or do something with gear, for instance. So yeah, we'll probably see more iconics. I don't know about iconic completionist specifically. I'm not sure why people are suddenly super excited about iconic completionist. I like the idea. I think that would be cool. Usually when we do a race, especially for an X pack, we would do a iconic as well. So my guess is that you'll see that at that same time. Have there been secrets that have been undiscovered in DDO? It's a good question. I don't think I should answer that. Like, why would we have secrets in DDO if I'm gonna tell you if they're still there?
We are at 5 o'clock here, so we'll probably just take another couple minutes of questions and then wrap things up. I know that someone has been wanting us to talk a little bit about imbue dice being affected by diversion, but that's really more of a comment for the systems team, I think.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we would like at some point to get that done. I have to look at it. What happened? Why?
I'm sorry, I don't know the story on that one. either.
So the problem is that the imbue dice don't generate threat. They don't follow the threat. It's not that they generate, it's they generate too much threat. If you take threat reduction enhancements, it doesn't apply to your imbue dice. And I think that was always the case. The problem was it was always the case. It's not fixing a bug, it's actually adding a brand new system that imbue dies affected by those. But before, the imbue die was a small enough percentage of your DPS that I don't think it. But I could be mistaken on that. It could be that the revamp was done to be more performant and didn't include that system. But in any thing, what's happening is you before you were safe to just do DPS and you wouldn't lose to the tank, and then they swapped to this new shiny imbue system, and all of a sudden you're pulling creatures off the tank, particularly if you're doing AoE. Like a ranger dropping into their dance of death and not having lots of imbue dice, and there's some threat reduction gear and enhancements to affect the imbue dice, so I don't immediately die when I pull threat off of the tank in Reaper, is what they're talking about. And I absolutely agree that's something. When we looked at it, I think that the problem was it's like literally wasn't implemented. It wasn't even a bug. It's just the code wasn't there, and so that's something that we'll have to look at.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, I'll have to write that down. We're aware of that, and it's a big task for some reason, and I remember discussing it.
All right. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there then. Thanks very much for taking an hour with us here, Sev, and thank you everyone for watching this Q&A. Also, make sure to check out that producer's letter. It is the 2023 roadmap as well. You can find it over on ddo.com. You can also find it on all of our social media channels. These videos also get uploaded to YouTube and Facebook afterwards for your archival viewing if you wish to. Hello, everyone who's watching over on YouTube and Facebook. And again, thanks, Sev, very much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your questions. I tried my hardest.
We'll have you back on again in the near future. All right. Okay. Have fun, everyone. Have a good day.